Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parabrajagacharya Stotarasara Shri Śrīmad His Divine Grace A. C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai Gaura Pramanandi Haribo Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Can you get me a Bhagavad Gita? Gita? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyandimaranjasya Jananjana Salakya Chakshuram Maditanyana Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha. Thank you. Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, chapter 14, The Forest of Enjoyment. Sounds enchanting. Text number 5. See what we can do. Tathagato damsama shakya samapassadhe manujai shalabha sankunta. Tashkaram mushakharibhir uparu jammana bahi pranakvachit. Parhivatamanosmin advanavijhakama karmabhi uparakta. Manasanu papanatam naralokam gandharva nagara upapannam iti mityadrishti anupashyati. Anyone want to have a go at that? Others? No? Very nice, thank you. Tatra, to that household life, gata, gone, damsha, gadflies, masaka, mosquitoes, sama, equal to, apasadai, who are low class, manujai, by men, shalabha, locust, shakunta, a large bird of prey, taskara, thieves, musaka adibir, by rats and so on, uparu jamana, being disturbed, vahi prana, the external life air in the form of wealth and so on. Kvachit, sometimes. Parivartamana, wandering. Ajmin, in this. Advani, path of material existence. Avidya kama, by ignorance and lust, karma-bhi, and by fruit of activities, uparakrit manasa, due to the mind's being influenced, anupappana atam, in which the desired results are never obtained. Nadalokam, this material world, Gandharva Nagaram, a will-o'-the-wisp city, a will-o'-the-wisp city. Upapanam, existing, iti, taking it as, mithya drishti, he whose vision is mistaken, anupashyati, observes. Translation. Sometimes the conditioned soul in household life, being attached to material wealth and possessions, is disturbed by gadflies and mosquitoes, and sometimes locusts, birds of prey, and rats give him trouble. Nonetheless, he still wanders down the path of material existence. Due to ignorance, he becomes lusty and engages in fruitive activity. Because his mind is absorbed in these activities, he sees the material world as permanent, although it is temporary, like a phantasmagoria, a house in the sky. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The following song is sung by Narottam Das Thakur. Ahankare matahana nitai pada pasariyam satchare satchakari mani. Due to forgetting the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda and being puffed up by material possessions, wealth and opulence, one thinks the false temporary material world to be an actual fact. This is the material disease. The living entity is eternal and blissful, but despite material conditions, he thinks the material world to be real and factual due to his ignorance. So here an explanation, a further explanation of this material world, the nature of the living entity, and how we are entrapped in this material world is being explained. So, here is describing family life, and of course there is family life in all species of life. I remember being in doing Padayatra in New Zealand with my spiritual master and many different devotees, perhaps 100 different devotees, and we would travel. Each year we would go, one year we would do the North Island, Padayatra, and at the end we would come back to Auckland for a big Rath Yatra festival. So we coincide, 100, by that time we could have picked up to a couple of hundred devotees, and then we'd all converge on this Rath Yatra festival in ecstasy. And the next year we would go to South Island and do the same. So we'd go to each of the... And we had a bullock cart and big murti of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, probably as tall as this roof. And we would travel, but then we would stop a couple of miles out of town and then walk into town in procession with a big statue of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the bullock carts, and big Harinam like that. And we would camp by a beach or a river, with all the devotees, and we would advertise, and then after a few days of advertising, giving out books, we would put on a big festival where people who had almost never seen devotees would go completely mad, chanting Hare Krishna, literally bouncing off the walls, dancing for hours and hours like that. Anyway, when we were travelling, my spiritual master had a habit of always, if there were, sites to visit, he would always go and visit them. So if we went past a glacier, we would all stop and we'd all go see the glacier like that. If there were hot pools, we would all, go and visit the hot pools like that. So we went to, of course, all sorts of different places. I remember one time at the hot pools, somewhere up in North Island. So we were bathing. I was bathing in the. We were bathing in the hot pools, and you would start at the least hot, dip your toes in, see if you could get in, and then you would fully. These were mud pools, so the hot mud coming up naturally. So we'd bathe in there, and then gradually you would go into the next one because you'd become accustomed to the heat, and then gradually you work your way up to the bulldog, which was so hot. So if you went there first, you couldn't even touch your toe in there, but after a while you'd go and dip in there. Anyway, I was in the bulldog for a while, and then I went and sat with my spiritual master, and I said I was having a talk with some of the locals, some of the Maoris. And I said, what did you used to do with these mud pools, in the old days? And he said, Pakya and Puha. Yeah. Puha is like a natural, sort of like a type of spinach which grows. And Pakya means white meat, specifically human. So they would put the pakya and the puha in the hot pools and cook them up. I was telling that to my spiritual master, and then he wanted to get out. But so anyway, we used to visit everything. So one time we were stopped. We went to see there was just a little sanctuary for birds and animals, and we were watching these. They're like beautiful parrots, big parrots, beautiful colours. And one was, that there was a couple, it was like a family, and they were just sort of embracing. So they would put their heads and just resting their heads on each shoulders and just, just being very affectionate to each other, the husband and the wife, like that. And my spiritual master turned to me, he said, just see Gangeswar, every species of life, same thing. And so, you can see like that every species of life, it's the same thing. This forest of enjoyment. And in the human form of life, although we become very proud that we're very civilized and very advanced in knowledge and all the arts and so many things, still everything is based around the same thing, the being in the bodily concept of life and absorbed in the family life. And of course, family life has a lot of difficulty. One can be in 8,400,000 different species of life. So of course we know that on the cold, freezing nights, we see the animals they don't come inside, they have to just be in the trees or hide under a rock or something, and they're always being chased by different predators. They're always looking, who will eat me? So imagine, as you go about your day and you're thinking, you're wandering around, oh, I'll go to work today, or, go to the temple, but who might eat me on the way? But that is their life, very fierce. And, quite often they're being chased and they don't get caught, they might lose a leg or get a bite here and there. If you see the big seals on the beaches, not to speak of other species trying to eat you, then you've got this constant battle in your own species because they want to mate, so they want to get a partner and mate, and therefore, one animal is thinking, oh, this big seal looks very attractive to me, and I can hear her singing, it's attracting my mind, like that. Or, the ass is thinking like that, or I hear the braying of the she-ass. So they go there, and of course, the she-ass, thinking, who's this big donkey? I'm not very interested in this, big ass, and kicks him in the face. Get out of here, you fool. And but then, you see in many species that literally they have to fight for many days, long time. They have to fight the other males in order to, if they lose a battle, then they leave. They leave because if they don't leave, the next thing is that they'll be killed. And usually they lose a battle because they've been significantly injured, and if they don't leave, then they'll just be finished off because they're not going to be able to win. And so, just to, for us, of course, as humans, to get the good partner, usually just have to have the nice hairdo, good pair of shoes, nice car. That'll usually do it. And, sometimes, I used to always know when the brahmacharinis were looking to get married, because what happens, of course, when you live in a temple, we all put on a little weight because of all the nice, opulent foods and what have you. But when you see someone slimming down all of a sudden, then you feel, okay, this and usually within some time they do get married. So, we have our ways in the human, but it's not as difficult, but still we have to work. We have to work very hard for that nice pair of shoes, for that nice car, and we have to work very hard to get the things which attract. And the buying clothing these days, people, businesses prey on that. They know that this is the natural mentality, so therefore they will sell the clothes which are most alluring to the opposite sex, but they're very, very high priced, because if you want to have... So they know that if you're wearing what they wore yesterday and someone's wearing what they're wearing today, that person will stand out for the attention. But to get that, you have to pay some extra, like that. So, so in this way, one has to work very, very, very hard in the factories and the offices, and sometimes, you know, we see that the crime rate around the world, that, you know, it is, the people will steal, they will murder, they will rob, you know, to get that money, because if they don't get that money, people are not going to look at them, you know. The opposite sex generally walks them past, especially in Kali Yuga, because everything is so superficial. People don't have good character in Kali Yuga. So no one's going to be attracted by someone because of their good character, because they don't have that. People are lusty, they're greedy, they're jealous, they're envious, they're impatient, they're intolerant, they're harsh. They had limited ability to talk because they're always on their iPhones. They've lost the ability to communicate. They've lost their ability to actually be aware of other people in their environment who are talking to them. So someone's talking to them, but they're on their phone. They don't even know someone's talking to them. They can live in a house with their family and never have a conversation with anyone. So, you know, that is the nature. So people aren't attracted to them because of their good qualities or what have you. It's how they look, the good look. And they have to, you know, have a certain look. That's, so they have to have the special clothes, the special haircut. And of course, even these days, you know, the haircut has to stand out. Right? So you can't get the short back and the sides, which the little Elvis Presley curl at the front anymore. You know, you have to have something that sticks up, that's bright red here, and something like that. But to get that, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And then what happens? Someone thinks, oh, they're getting all the attention, so I better. But and the people at the hairdressers, they know that, so they've got something else that, you know, does something great, but you have to pay extra for that. So, so you know, this is, you know, the birds, the peacocks put out their display of feathers, and some birds puff themselves up with the red. So, but we do the same thing as humans, but because, you know, in Kali Yuga, you know, people understand that mentality, and they do business off that sense gratification. So a lot of money. So what we're doing is literally, there's no difference between, you know, our sort of brightly coloured hair sticking up in all directions and the peacock, you know, showing its plumes of feathers. It's the same thing. It's every species of life. So a lot of trouble. But as it's described here, what happens is that what we don't see is that we're suffering and doing the same foolish things that the animals are doing. This is going on in every species of life. You know, even if one is a little snail, you know, or squirmy little yucky snail, it's the same thing. Do you know, snails, I don't know how they do it, but of course, well, we do know how they do it. It's a super soul, God in their heart. But on certain nights, if you go outside, you won't see one snail. And then on another night, if you go out, every snail, they've all come out. They all know. They all know on this night. Have you seen that? You've seen it, yeah. You've seen that? No? So I have a spare block next door, and we have a lot of gardens, so I always keep an eye on the snails. But sometimes I used to go out with Varuni, and we do a snail collection. So we take a bucket, because when you see those knights, we used to go and collect them up and then just put them across the road in the paddocks over there. But we would fill buckets like this, just walk around our one property, just fill it. Because they've all come out, because they know, the males know, the ladies are out tonight. It's a fact. And the ladies know, the men are there. So they all come out. Oh, it's going to be, the action is there tonight. And but it's the same thing. And they have their little house, but they become so attached. So these species, they're so attached to their home that literally in that life, it is part of them. They're so attached. They want, when they leave this world, they want the attachment to the home. They will not give up their home, so it actually goes with them everywhere they go. They're sort of part of them. Literally part. Their home is part of them. So it's the same. It's the same activities that is going on, but that in that body of a snail, or a parrot, or a walrus, or a wolf, is actually a spirit soul. And that spirit soul is full of knowledge. So you have a spirit soul who has full knowledge, and yet it's acting like a donkey, an ass, a dog, because the spirit soul, when it wants to forget reality, then the Lord provides that opportunity. So every spirit soul is eternal, full of bliss, has a spiritual form. We all have a spiritual form that never dies, never gets diseased. And in the spiritual world, we can see the Lord face to face. So that's described in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita 5:7. This is the first verse I ever learnt as a devotee. Mamevam sa jiva loke jiva bhutta sanatanaha manaha sastranindriyani prakritistani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. See? So we are the Lord, the Supreme Lord, expands himself as personal expansions. So those personal expansions, the first personal expansion is who? I'll ask our little pundits up the front there. Who's the first expansion from the Supreme Original Personality of Godhead? Yeah? Say it again. Lord Brahma. Yeah, well, you're just a few down the track. You're sort of in the... One of the kids over the background. Who else? Who do you say? First expansion of Krishna. Balaram, yes. So of course the first expansion of the Lord is Balaram. So the Lord is one, but to expand the unlimited bliss of the spiritual world, he expands into many. So we know that that's the reason why we have families in this world as well, and friends. So none of us would like to spend our whole life just sitting on an island by ourselves. Even if you were stuck on an island, you'd probably rather be with your worst enemy than by yourself. You'd like to have some company. But So when you've got good friends, you've got a nice mother and father, husband and wife, and uncles and aunties, and so you have your birthday. No one likes to have their birthday by themselves. You have your birthday, so many people come along, and it's fun, a lot of fun like that. So, to expand our happiness, we have many friends, and husband and wife have children and families. So we have that propensity because we have the same qualities of God, because we also, so the Lord expands himself as different personal forms, so they're actually him, but in another body, who has an eternal identity, but is still him. So, because in that way, he can love his devotees, who are the expansions of one of his spiritual energies. He can love his devotees in many different forms. So just like Krishna, he has 16,108 wives. So one may think, so many wives, that, I'd like to be with each one and be happy with one in the palace in this way and happy with one in the other way. So Krishna expands himself into 16,108 forms and expands his happiness because he can be with each of the 16,108 wives at the exact same time, doing different things. So you imagine if you thought, okay, today I have to go to work, not really particularly happy about work, but while I'll expand myself, go to work, while I'm doing that, I'll just be out with my friends kicking the ball in the paddock. And while I'm doing that, I'll be with some of my other friends down at the river having a swim. So, and when Krishna dances with the gopis, he has billions of gopis. Billions. We cannot, it's not possible to count. When he dances with them, he dances with each one, and he expands in a different form to dance with each gopi. So he's doing many, many different dances with many different gopis. When Krishna sits, he can also stay in the one form. When Krishna sits, he can be in one place, and yet all of his cowherd friends who are enjoying eating with him think that he's just sitting with them, looking at them, talking to them. So that is one way the Lord expands his happiness, is he expands himself. And the first expansion is Balaram. And that is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Then all the other expansions of the Lord come from Balaram. Balaram, of course, Krishna appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Balaram appeared as who? In Chaitanya Leela. There's our pundits at the front here. So, I'm going to give you another chance. Krishna appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Who did Balaram appear as? Who? Nityananda Prabhu. Very good. That's it. So, he appeared as Nityananda. So, Nityananda is Balaram. So, this is mentioned in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Very interesting purports Srila Prabhupada gives. That again, text 38 of the 10th chapter. Brishninam Vasudevashmi Pandavanam Dhananjaya Muninam Apyaham Vyasa Kavinam Ushana Kavi. Of the descendants of Brishni, I am Vasudev, and of the Pandavas, I am Arjuna, of the sages, I am Vyasa, and among the great thinkers, I am Ushana. Purport. Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the first form of God is Krishna. He is the beginning of everything. There is nothing before Krishna. He is everything. He is the beginning. the origin of all things. And Baladev is Krishna's immediate expansion. Both Lord Krishna and Baladev appeared as sons of Vasudeva, so both of them may be called Vasudeva. So we can also call Balaram Vasudeva, because he's also the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Not Devaki, but Vasudeva. They have the same father, different mothers, but the same father. So, from another point of view, because Krishna never leaves Vrindavan, all the forms of Krishna that appear elsewhere are his expansions. Vasudeva is Krishna's immediate expansion, so Vasudeva is not different from Krishna. It is to be understood that the Vasudeva referred to in this verse of Bhagavad Gita is Baladev or Balaram, because he is the original source of all incarnations, and thus he is the sole source of Vasudeva. The immediate expansions of the Lord are called Svamsa, personal expansions, and there are also expansions called Vibhanansa, separated expansions. So, all the forms of the Lord, including Vasudeva Krishna when he's not in Vrindavan, all expand from Baladev, Balaram, Lord Nityananda. So Lord Nityananda is the source of all incarnations. And so there are many different incarnations, and in that way the Lord expands himself in many different forms, personal forms, so it's the same person, but he can be in many places at once, and he can be in many different, just as he can be in 16,108 different palaces with his queens, he can be in unlimited varieties of Vaikuntha planets. So one Krishna can be in 16,108 palaces, or with his billions of gopis, and that same one Krishna expands, he can be in unlimited Vaikuntha planets with all the different varieties of devotees. So therefore, to expand his bliss, his love, he expands himself. But also, he expands as the devotees who, all living in, all spirit souls, who can become devotees, or who are eternally devotees, and who love him in different ways. So if one loves the Lord and loves him in the particular mood of Ramchandra, then they can go to the Vaikuntha planet and love him there. If they love the Lord in the mood of Narasingha, they can go to the Vaikuntha planet, where Lord Krishna is there in his expansion, and they can love him in that particular way. If they love Krishna in his form of Krishna, but they like to be in Dwarka, then they can go to that part of Goloka Vrindavan, or Mathura, or Vrindavan, like that. So there are two types of expansions of God. Personal expansions, Svamsa, I'm going to ask you a question. Yep. And Vibhanansa, separated expansions. Which ones are we? The personal expansions of God or the separated expansions of God? Yep. Separated. Good. Excellent. Yeah, separated means that we're not God. He has his own individual identity, personality. He's one person, and yet he has unlimited forms. And in that way, many different eternal identities. But we are separated, means that we are given our own individual existence, separate from God, eternally, as a spirit soul. So we're given this, and that identity, of course, is each spirit soul. Each of us has a unique, eternal ability to increase the bliss of God in a particular way that no other living entity does. It's a nice thought, isn't it? So the variety, there's unlimited variety there. So we're a spirit soul, eternal spirit soul, and we each have that ability to expand the bliss of the Lord, and when we do that, we enjoy that bliss ourselves in cooperation with the Lord. So, the Lord, Balaram, who's also known as Sankirtan, and Sankirtan is again one of the expansions of the Lord who awards all the spiritual identities their eternal individuality. He's a predominating deity of the sense of identity. In the material world, when we come to this material world, we get a false identity. Oh, I am this body. And Sankirtan expands as Mahavishnu, and from Mahavishnu we get all the demigods, including Durga, Brahma and Shiva. So Shiva and Durga, they give us our material identity. That's why Lord Shiva is covered with the different serpents. Have you seen the picture of Shiva? He has the different nagas. Because when he goes into meditation, he meditates upon Sankirtan. And one of the forms of Sankirtan is also Nagasesha, who appears like the serpent. So if one worships Lord Shiva can remove our material identity. How does he get the ability to do that? He can only do that by being empowered to do that by Sankirtan. So Lord Shiva meditates upon Sankirtan, and if we worship Shiva over many lifetimes, we may gradually come to the point where we realize, I am a spirit soul. If we realize we're a spirit soul, we will then worship Sankirtan or the Vishnu Tattva in his different forms. Narayan, Sankirtan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, one of the different avatars, Narasingha. And then, as a spirit soul, we can actually understand, I'm not just an impersonal spirit, I'm actually a particular individual. And if we engage in devotional service, we realize our eternal, which particular individual I am, gradually. We gradually reveal our own individual spiritual nature, eventually even our spiritual form, and as it states in the Bhagavad Gita, so in other words, by worshipping Lord Nityananda, especially, because Lord Nityananda is Sankirtan, who has awarded us originally our eternal spiritual identities, that Lord Nityananda, if you worship him, you don't have to go through the slow process of worshipping Shiva and gradually coming to this level and that level. You can just go straight to Lord Nityananda and he will bring you to the point immediately where you can understand, kick off this material, false identification that I am this body, which gives me so much trouble, like the animals searching after illusory, connections in this world. Kick that off and enjoy the transcendental platform that I am a humble Masmi, I am the eternal servant of the personality of Godhead. Lord Nityananda will very quickly bring us to that point. And therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 15, there's this very nice, we'll go back to 15.7, says, according to the Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself in innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansions are called Vishnu Tattva and the secondary expansions are called the living entities. In other words, the Vishnu Tattva is the personal expansion and the living entities are the separated expansions. By his personal expansion, he manifested in various forms like Rama, Nrsimha, Vishnu Murti, and all the predominating deities in the Vaikuntha planets. The separated expansions, the living entities, are eternally servitors. The personal expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual identities of Godhead, are always present. Similarly, the separated expansions of the living entities have their identities. As fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, the living entities have fragmental portions of his qualities, of which independence is one. Every living entity, as an individual soul, has his personal individuality and a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul, and by proper use of the independence, he is always liberated. In his conditioned life, he is dominated by the modes of material nature, and if he gets the transcendental loving service to the Lord. So, as we described in this purport today that we're reading, due to forgetting Lord Nityananda and being puffed up by material possessions of wealth and opulence, one thinks the false temporary material world to be actual fact. So we forget two things. We forget our eternal identity as the spirit soul, part and parcel of the Lord, and we forget our eternal loving relationship with the Supreme Lord in any of his different expansions. In other words, we forget the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, and forgetting the spiritual reality, the blissful spiritual reality, we become absorbed and puffed up with our opulence and wealth and possessions. So as described, when the walrus defeats all the other walruses and has a herd of females, he becomes puffed up. Look at me, spread all across the beach. This is my domain, this frozen part of the world, and as I, charge across the stony, rubbly ground, on my belly, I am so powerful, and hear all the, wonderful, females that, and I am the Lord of everything, like that, so puffed up like that. And so, in each species, they're like that, They roar, sometimes they roar, loudly. And people can, other animals hear them. Oh, there's the king of the beasts over there, stay away. So powerful, here's the Lord, here's the enjoy. So we become puffed up. And in human form, we do the same thing. We get in our car. We could drive up the street at 40 kilometres an hour, if there's a 40 kilometre, but we could drive up the street at 100 kilometres, roaring our car, just in case there's some nice damsels there who may want to look. Oh, what have you got under the hood there? Roaring like a, giant walrus. It is the same thing. So, now, therefore, Prabhupada says the living entities in this purport, 15.7, the living entities, not only human beings and the cats and dogs, but even the greater controllers in the material world, Brahma, Shiva, and even Vishnu are all parts and parcels of the Lord. Now, He quotes this verse from the Shruti, and it says, "It is stated here that when a living entity gives up this material embodiment and enters into the spiritual world, he revives his spiritual body, and in his spiritual body he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He can hear and speak to him face to face, and he can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is. From Smriti also it is understood, in the spiritual planet everyone lives in bodies featured like the Supreme Personality of Godheads. As far as bodily construction is concerned, there is no difference between the part and parcel living entities and the expansions of Vishnu Murti. In other words, at liberation, the living entity gets a spiritual body by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead." So we forget that. We forget that and become absorbed in the material body with all its problems, forgetting that we have an eternal spiritual body waiting to manifest in the spiritual world, expanding from the spirit soul, and enjoy these loving pastimes with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, the nature of material desires, as soon as we have a material desires, it will drag our consciousness from whatever lofty heights we may have attained, and as soon as we have lusty desires, it immediately concretes our consciousness within the bodily conception of life. That I am the enjoyer of the objects of the senses manifested by the material energy, and I am the enjoyer of the objects of the senses with the senses of this body, and that I am this proud, I am the Lord of this material energy. I shall control the material energy and enjoy the material energy, and with that we are, as soon as we accept the dictations of the material mind and body, we are immediately covered by ignorance, that in any way it is not, the Lord is the enjoyer and the control of the material energy, and we don't become, we feel that Ishvara, sometimes the spirit soul is described as Ishvara because we can, decide to try and enjoy the material world in a particular mode of material nature, but ultimately it is illusion, and we only end up being the servant of the senses, who are very, very harsh masters. The mind and the senses will cause unlimited havoc and pain and suffering, life after life. They don't care, the senses do not care how well you have served them. The mind does not care. You can serve them for millions and billions of lifetimes. You can come into different universes and stay within those universes from the time of Lord Brahma and go into another universes, and the senses will still say, no, I'm not satisfied. And so you must suffer more. Whereas Lord Nityananda, you say, Lord Nityananda, what service can I offer you? I have no qualification, I have no abilities, but although I can't serve you, I have no qualification, I'll just try and do what little I can. And Lord Nityananda said, for that, I am taking you back to the spiritual world. So, in fact, Lord Nityananda, he's not waiting for us to say, oh, I will, maybe I would like to try and serve. No, he comes banging on the door. And he does that through his devotees. He'll do it personally when he's here, and he also does it personally, but through his devotees. He sends them. On my behalf, Lord Nityananda says, you go door to door, every town and village, you knock on their door. Please, sir, chant Hare Krishna. And so he doesn't even wait. So even to the most sinful persons, Lord Nityananda, you knock on everyone's door. You don't discriminate that, oh, these are the wealthy people, these are the poor people, these are the pious people. I remember one time doing Sankirtan, we used to just go everywhere. If there was a person there, we went there and tried to sell them something to liberate Lakshmi, get a little, facility for distributing Prabhupada's books and prasad and putting on festivals, making the temple. So if there was something open, we just went there. And if there was a marathon on and you've gone to every other place, whatever's left open, you've got to go there, because not only are you doing the marathon, but you're enjoying the bliss of competing with your god brothers and god sisters. So anyway, I was with, I used to do Sankirtan with Ganesh, who was a Prabhupada disciple. And I went into this place where it was a chicken factory where they kill chickens and, send them to the supermarket in the guise of food. And so I was standing there, people were, we literally, in those days, we just went right into the factory. So the only person I could get to talk to me was this person on the belt. On the belt was all the chickens hanging upside down. And this person's job, yes, it's not very nice, but as they come past, he just chopped their head off, the next one chopped. That was his job all day long. Right? So he's covered that. The Prabhupada disciple next to me said, my spiritual master didn't ask me to do this. And he left. Anyway, I thought, if this poor, wretched person would buy something, give a little something to Lord Nityananda, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that would be wonderful. Because what an existence. What would be his future like that? He'll be a chicken. He'll end up on that belt in his next life, coming life after life. So he bought something. He bought something. So I was really happy. I didn't care about the money. I was really happy that he bought it. He did something. Lord Nityananda will never forget that. So, Lord Nityananda, so who can, that love of the Lord, we cannot imagine that he's not waiting for people to, he is saying, no, let's go out and find them. Those, it doesn't matter, sinful, pious, anyone, if you can find that they will, in the slightest way, engage in the service of Krishna, somehow or another, you give them that mercy of Lord Nityananda, because he is ready to give them their mercy. So because they've forgotten this mercy of Lord Nityananda and they're puffed up with material life, therefore they are in this illusion and have lost all sight of reality. So I'll leave it there if anyone has any questions or comments about this. Is this about chicken factories? Yep. Okay.
How does Lord Shiva remove the ignorance within?
He has spiritual instructions, and gradually through the spiritual instructions, he will also take people from the lowest, tamaguna, and gradually, life after life, though, he will gradually bring them through spiritual instructions. To the point, so Şङ्karaචārya was an expansion of Lord Shiva. Yeah. So, in different ways, he gives spiritual instructions about the, coming to the level of the spirit soul, and he gives them his blessings and what have you, and he will bring them to that level. But from that point, then, if you get his mercy, then he will direct you to the Vaishnavas. Lord Nityananda represents Guru Tattva or Vaishnava Tattva. So after understanding, even if one understands one's the spirit soul, one has to go to Lord Nityananda, either direct, because we can't directly go to him, but the spiritual master is considered the direct manifestation of Lord Nityananda's mercy. So we approach the spiritual master, and if we're not on that level, the devotees will gradually, by associating with the Vaishnavas. So Lord Nityananda is also Vaishnava Tattva. He represents the Vaishnava. And gradually by coming to the Vaishnavas and taking seriously their association, and one can then take shelter of the spiritual master. And then the spiritual master who represents Lord Nityananda will explain how we are the eternal servant of the personality of Godhead. If we get Lord Nityananda's blessings, or the spiritual master and the Vaishnava's blessings, then we get Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's blessings. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's in the mood of Srimati Radharani, then Radharani will give her blessings, and then we get these spiritual teachings from the spiritual master about the different, very elevated understandings of rasa or the mellows of love of God, like that. So so we come to the slow process through Lord Shiva, or you just Lord Nityananda, as we say, Lord Nityananda is saying, just in Kali Yuga, don't bother, I'm banging on your door, just take notice of me. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments? In Kali Yuga, if people don't take, the opportunity of associating with, the shelter of Lord Nityananda by associating with the devotees and the spiritual master, practically there's no real hope. The slow process doesn't work in Kali Yuga. One just becomes confused and bewildered. In fact, that slow process can quite often turn people to atheism. If people follow the process of gradually coming to the impersonal understanding of Brahman, quite often they will become somewhat atheistic in their attitude, because it's so there's nothing attractive about it. Yeah, there's no there's no description of the spiritual world and the wonderful spiritual forms that we have in the spiritual world. So it's so unappealing that it actually diverts people's attention back to this material world. All right then, any other questions, comments? Jai? Hare Krishna.